good saucer cult contactee kind of, space brother narrative that people want to apply to this. And you're absolutely right. I've had the same experience where the witnesses with whom I've spoken, who are alien abductees, pretty consistently, I would say at best, the beings described were, sort of scientifically clinical in how they approach things, just sort of very detached and, maybe unemotional, and that's at best, at their friendliest. And then it only really gets worse from there.
Oh, yeah. Well, well, I put it this way. If somebody abducted you out of your house, right, while you were sleeping, and you go to the authorities and they catch them, they're going to go to prison for a long time. These people, or these aliens, whatever they are, they don't care if they take you out of your car, out of your home. They have no remorse of removing your, eggs from a woman, or taking DNA, or taking sperm from a man, experimenting, putting in their fingers. Like Calvin said, that what they did was trying to put their fingers down his throat and come up his navel passage all the way back out through his nose. The stuff they've done to these people, it just scares me. And so therefore, I just can't find them as friendly as some people do. And that's, it's a shock if somebody's been abducted once, okay? Like Whitney, he's been supposedly abducted numerous times. Could you imagine once it happens to you, you go to bed at night, what's going to be in your mind? Am I going to be abducted tonight or tomorrow night?
Right. Yeah, well, it's like I said, it's hugely traumatic, and I think the one thing that people have going for them is the fact that human beings are an amazingly adaptable species. I mean, we can get used to almost anything. And I think that's the only thing that gets people through it, I remember as a kid, with the experiences I had, it just being terrified to go to bed at night. I would do anything to avoid it because I knew there was a chance that something terrifying was going to happen. And, I would go to ridiculous lengths. Like, one of the things I would do was we had this dog, and I love this dog. We got along great. Her name was Baby, and I would literally follow the dog around at night and try to sleep with her on the floor so I wouldn't be alone. And that, it sounds silly, but when I was a little kid, it helped. And I think that was one of the ways that I kind of adapted to my situation, in my own childlike way. And I think that it's little things like that that people do, and I, like, for instance, one of the things I remember, and I don't remember a lot of specifics on this, but there'll be people like Whitley who will try to fight back. Some people try to communicate. Some people will make some kind of plan. They're like, I'm going to do this, and if I do this, then maybe I won't be abducted, or maybe, I'm going to have this plan in place for the next time I'm abducted, and I'll try to, do such and such, and it makes them feel better. And it doesn't even matter what that plan is necessarily. Just, I think, having it makes people feel better. And I think that just shows sort of the adaptability of our snakies, where, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's terrifying. And people do dread going to bed. People do dread, night coming, because there's a chance something horrible is going to happen to them. But, you come up with these little ways to get through it. And
but do they really get through it?
To do.
Tobias, do they really get through it? Because virtually every person I've talked to that has been, claimed that they have been abducted, just talking to them, you can tell that they've been scarred for life. and it's on their mind 24/7, which that is bad. I mean, wouldn't it be a bad situation when you get up in the morning and you're going to work, and on the way to work you think, oh God, am I going to be abducted again? Or you remember little bits and pieces of your abduction, and you have to carry that on for, like the vets in Vietnam for years and years, and still suffering from what happened over in Vietnam. The same thing is happening to these people that have been abducted.
Yeah. I mean, you won't get any disagreement from me. I think there's a big difference between getting through it and getting better. I'm not saying anybody's getting better. I'm saying that people find a way to grit their teeth and just white knuckle it through the day. And that's all I mean from that. So it's not good. Obviously that's not an ideal situation for anybody.
No.
But, what's the alternative?
But they're lucky. They're the lucky ones that were returned. So, yeah, maybe they might be abducted again, or maybe they might never be abducted again. But how about the people maybe that have been abducted and never returned? That is the other issue. So they're very lucky. That's what I usually tell them, before we go on air. I say, hey, you were abducted, okay, and you survived. Look at the people that maybe been abducted and never returned, and who knows what happened to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrifying, obviously, because if you think about the powerlessness endemic to the abduction experience, you're talking about beings that seemingly can do things that we would consider, I mean, to be so advanced that it's basically magic, and they can do these things at will. We don't know what the rules of them are. We don't know how any of it works. We don't really have an effective way to protect ourselves. I've heard people say things like, like prayer has worked in certain situations, and maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But I do know that I think if that's all it took, I don't know that these repeat abduction experiencers would have their whole lives turned upside down and ruined if really all they had to do was pray it away.
Yeah.
So yeah, just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Now, getting back to Mothman, too, has there ever been reports of where they've been Mothman's sightings, where example that they had missing people in the area, too?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I don't know of any where anybody was necessarily abducted and, anybody tied it to Mothman, in the sense of, sort of being analogous to alien abduction. But there was a brief abduction reported by someone relatively recently, where he said as a child he was taken by this winged humanoid. So this guy got a hold of our research team, and he lives out in Indiana, which has had a pretty recent and pretty numerous spate of Mothman sightings and reports and stuff lately. And so this guy said, like, he got a hold of us, and he said that way back in 1969, so he was just a little kid back in '69. He was in bed, and at the time his family lived in this trailer, and the trailer had some roof damage. So there was a hole in the trailer, and while it was being fixed, they had this tarp over it. And so he was awoken one night by this strange noise, and he described this just rancid odor. And he said he looked over towards his sister's crib because they shared a room, and he saw this tall-winged humanoid staring down at her. And he said that this being then slowly turned and looked at him, and he's terrified, obviously. And he said this thing, was very tall, which again is very, very commonly reported. So he said he would have estimated it was between 7 and 8 feet in height. And that, interestingly, its body and face was covered in this black hair, and that's something actually that we're seeing again and again now. Descriptions of this long black hair, and so he described it as having this crouched posture. But I mean, you'd almost have to if it's 7 or 8 feet tall. It's standing in this trailer, and it had these huge leathery wings. So here we are again, with this consistent description of the most outstanding physical feature being these huge leathery wings. And so this thing, it's got sharp teeth and dark eyes, and he says it makes this weird low sort of garbled sound, not exactly language, but like a rumbling almost. And so he starts screaming, and he's trying to get his parents' attention. His grandmother was present, and his grandmother actually came into the room, and when she saw this thing, she just falls down, basically. Like, she just falls right to her knees. She's just stunned, and this thing picks him up. Walks over his bed, grabs him, makes its way into the living room, where it apparently had obviously come in through this hole because the tarp's out of the way, and it takes him out. It goes back out through that hole, and at this point, his memory is a little fuzzy. I mean, understandably so. He's got to be in shock or something. And he just remembered being very cold and wet. It was raining outside, and hearing his grandmother screaming, and then just sort of nothing. And he doesn't know how long he was gone, but just remembers at some time later waking up in his bed with his parents and grandmother, still very panicked from what happened. And so another interesting part of this story, which I think people will, especially people who are interested in things like alien abduction might find interesting, was his parents described this sort of like, I think it was a sort of like hypnotic state, basically. So it's almost as though everybody except for his grandmother somehow, by some weird mechanism, I don't know how, I can't even guess how any of it works. His parents were, and everybody in the house other than his grandmother were apparently put in this sort of like hypnotic state of suspended animation, where they didn't wake up to any of the screaming or any of the violence or any of the excitement until this thing had taken him away. And so later on, and this is now the guy himself doesn't remember this part. This had to come from his parents and grandmother. So after he was taken, according to them, he was only gone for several minutes. At which time they heard this scratching noise and a loud thud on the roof of the trailer. His dad climbs up there, and the kid lying unconscious up on this roof. And so, I mean, it's a wild story, and it's, to my knowledge, the only case that I've ever heard of where anybody was abducted by any Mothman-like creature. And again, it didn't last very long. It didn't take them to a spaceship or anything. But yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it.
Yeah, that's interesting. R.W. Wells basically says, do you think the Mothman is an alien being or a subhumanoid?